New York Times poll shows that 64% of Democratic primary voters do not want Biden to run again in 2024. New CNN reporting suggests, however, they may not get their wish.
Today, a new poll shows Democrats aren't just unhappy with President Biden's job performance. A majority don't want him to run for re-election, adding weight to new reporting over the growing criticism of both his actions and administration messaging. So let's start with the New York Times poll analysis. Quote, President Biden is facing an alarming level of doubt from inside his own party, with 64% of Democratic voters saying they would prefer a new standard bearer in the 2024 presidential campaign, as voters nationwide have soured on his leadership, giving him a meager 33% job approval rating.
We're back with new polling that shows Democrats are getting a post-Roe bounce, but numbers also show President Biden is facing an uphill battle within his own party when it comes to 2024. CNN senior data reporter Harry Enton is here now to break down all the numbers for us. And Harry, Democrats are worried about whether President Biden is their right or strongest candidate for 2024. What are the numbers showing?
Well, we could just take a look at the national indicators, and I think this gives us a very clear understanding of why Democrats are so nervous. So these are national indicators are bad for Democrats for this point of first midterm. Look at this. A 76-year low for presidential approval. A 68-year low for the University of Michigan consumer confidence. A 44-year low for belief that the USA is on the right track. So when you put all of this together, you can see why Democrats are going, oh, my goodness gracious. These are horrific numbers. They are bad for the president, and they're bad because folks just don't think the country is on the right track.
Yeah, you haven't mentioned inflation in there, but that has a lot to do with it, right?
It does. So, whenever I think of inflation, I think of presidencies that went really awry. I think of Jimmy Carter and disapprove of the job on inflation at this point in the presidency. Right now, look at this. 71% disapprove of the job that Joe Biden is doing on inflation. Jimmy Carter at this point in 1978, look at that. 66%. And of course, that sunk the Carter presidency. Joe Biden is worse on inflation in the American minds than Jimmy Carter was. That is a no bueno comparison.
Yeah, disapprove.
Disapprove, not approve.
Okay,
disapprove.
Let's flip the script here, because you are seeing Democrats get a bounce when it comes to Roe v. Wade being overturned, and what are the implications there? Yeah,
so, if you look right now at the choice for Congress and you look essentially, okay, by when the Supreme Court overturned Roe, what we see right now on the generic congressional ballot is Republicans are still ahead, but they're only up by a point. If you compare that to pre-decision, the Republicans were up by 3 points. Now, 2 points is maybe some movement. It's not necessarily a lot, but it is some movement. This is in the average of polls, so I do think it's real. But here's the reason why there hasn't been that much movement. The biggest concern facing your family right now, you might see something similar going on with these top four. Number one being inflation at 33%, gas prices at 15%, the economy more generally at 9%, everyday bills at 6%. The top four are all about the economy, and that people just fear that they're not going to necessarily be able to pay for everything right now. Abortion is all the way down at the bottom at 5%. So we're seeing some movement on the generic congressional ballot, but when it comes to midterm preferences, the reason why they're staying pretty stable is because abortion just doesn't rank that high on the list of issues that are important in the American minds.
It's simple. It's the economy, stupid, right?
It's the economy, stupid. That's what it basically always is, and it is the case in this upcoming midterm
still
election.
Ringing true. Thank you, Harry Enton.
But first, Steve Kornacki joining us with some new numbers, including which person about 2/3 of Democrats don't want to see as their nominee in 2024. All right, new comments just in from the White House, and that is no comment on some new polling numbers out from the latest New York Times Siena College poll showing the president's approval rating at a low 33%. 1 in 3 think he's doing a good job, according to the poll, and 13% of Americans think that the country is headed in the right direction.
Yeah, well, so we have this number from the New York Times Siena, as you say, 33%, very low number there for Biden. Not the only recent poll that's shown low approval rating for Joe Biden. In fact, if you average together everything that's out there right now, including this new New York Times Siena poll, this is what it looks like. On average right now, Biden's approval rating under 40%, about 37.5, 37.7 to be exact. That disapproval rating maybe significantly as well. Over 50%, well over 50%. So one thing we can do is we can put this in perspective. When we're talking polling averages, this is the Real Clear Politics average here. We can look at where Biden's immediate predecessors were in their average at this exact same point, basically second week of July. But this does, I think, speak to a broad appetite that exists in the Democratic Party, maybe to look for another option, at least potentially in 2024. And then you mentioned it, though, when you do match Biden with Trump in this poll, for all of that baggage Biden's carrying around, it's 44-41. Frankly, this number doesn't make either one of them look that good. They're both so far under 50%. You kind of look at a matchup like this. You look at those numbers for Biden. You look at the numbers we've seen at Trump through the years. You almost look at it and say maybe Biden is the one guy Trump could beat and Trump is the one guy Biden could beat if it came to it in a matchup, at least based on these kinds of numbers. Of course, the caveat you always put on that, it is the middle of the midterm year. The midterm year is typically bad for a president. There is still an opportunity there for Joe Biden in the 2 years between now and 2024 to make up ground politically. We've seen past presidents do that. But yeah, overall, despite this lead over Trump in the head-to-head, that's about the only positive thing the White House could pull out of this poll.
Yeah.
And again, you just see that Biden's number so low compared to presidents whose parties did terribly on Election Day. So that's obviously a bad sign there historically for Biden. In terms of the age thing you're asking about, it is interesting among Democrats. It seems Biden is more popular with older Democratic voters than he is with younger Democratic voters. More appetite for a new candidate among younger Democrats.
Yeah, not necessarily surprising.
Now, Oliver's frustration with President Biden is not an anomaly. It is the norm right now. Most Americans feel that the United States is on the wrong track, and President Biden has historically low approval numbers. Moreover, 2/3 of Democratic primary voters in a brand new poll out today say they do not want Biden to be their nominee in 2024. As CNN's Caitlin Collins reports, this comes as crushing new poll numbers paint a very grim picture for President Biden and the Democrats in 2022 and beyond.
President Biden is facing challenging political headwinds as he's hemorrhaging support in his own party ahead of the midterm elections.
Elections matter.
A new poll says 64% of Democrats want a different candidate in the 2024 presidential race, and only 26% believe that Biden should be renominated. Biden is already the oldest president in American history, and 33% of Democrats who were surveyed voiced concerns about his age.
He intends to run, and if he does, I intend to run with him. So there you go.
Among all voters, Biden's job approval rating stands at just 33%, as his aides pushed back on doubt emanating from his own party.
There's going to be many polls. They're going to go up or they're going to go down. This is not the thing that we are solely focused on.
Now, Jake, Curran talked about polls going up and down. They certainly do. But one concern, of course, is that he is losing a lot of support in his own party. She said that they believed 92% of Democrats still stood with President Biden. Jake, that's only when in comparison of a choice between former President Trump and now President Biden. In reality, when as Democrats were asked about how they view the job that he is doing, only 70% of Democrats said they approved of the job that he's doing, Jake. Obviously, that's a concern for many reasons for this White House, but certainly because President Biden is expected to play a key role in trying to rally Democrats around their party come the November when the midterm elections happen. That's, of course, been a big concern for them as they are facing very challenging headwinds then. And it also goes back to how voters are viewing the economy, Jake, because there is so much pessimism in it. And, of course, that is a number one concern for them, even as the White House has tried to project strength in that area, Jake.
All right, Caitlin Collins, thanks so much. Let's discuss with our panel nationally. Allison, let me start with you. I want to dive more into these poll numbers from the New York Times and Siena College. As Caitlin reported, nearly 2/3 of Democratic primary voters want a different nominee. 2/3. If you break it down by age, 94% of Democratic primary voters under the age of 30, 94% say they don't want Biden. That is a stunning number.
Yes.
I mean, he swept his grandchildren, but other than that, I mean, like, 94% don't want him, who are,
94%.
Democrats under the age of 30.
Yeah. I'm not surprised. I think young voters often like to see what's out there. You know, they're new to the democracy. They want to understand different candidates. I personally think, you know, if Joe Biden runs again, great. If other people run in the Democratic Party, great. I think that's the test of our democracy, is that have an open field. If you can win, and then go into the general. if Joe Biden's on the top of the ticket in 2024, I will support him. But I think it's fine if there is a contested primary.
So, Nia Malika, the pollsters also asked about a hypothetical election between Trump and Biden. And Biden edges out Trump by just 3 points, which honestly, that's within the margin of error. And given Donald Trump tried to stage a coup, et cetera, I mean, he should be outpolling him way more than that. So notice the other voters, though. 10% in this poll, 10% say they would vote third party, or they would not vote at all. Now let's look at voters under 30. That number jumps to 29%. Nearly a third of the young electorate will sit it out or go third party. What do you think of that?
Listen, I mean, this is a five-alarm fire, particularly for Democrats, particularly going into the midterms. If we looked at 2018, we looked at 2020, record youth turnout, and that spelled a good news for Democrats at the ballot. In talking to Democratic pollsters who talk to young voters, there is a lot of lack of engagement and lack of faith in the system and lack of faith in voting. They say, listen, we voted and nothing changed in our lives. And you've seen from this White House a real inability to get around some of the issues young voters care about. Voting rights, for instance, student loans. I think Biden is still deciding a year and a half or so into his term what to do about those student loans.
About a promise he made.
Exactly. Listen,
Republicans
have a different problem, which is that this cohort of voters tend to vote Democratic. It's going to be among the most educated cohort we've seen in this country, and they haven't really been able to dial into young voters in the way that Democrats have. But it's a problem all around.
So, Ryan Streeter, when pollsters asked voters why they wanted another nominee, a third of them cited President Biden's age. Here's what a 38-year-old daycare worker in Michigan told the Times, quote, "I'm just going to come out and say it. I want younger blood. I am so tired of all old people running our country. I don't want someone knocking on death's door." Now, obviously, this is most relevant for Joe Biden, who's the president. But it's not irrelevant when it comes to Donald Trump.